Hi besties, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to Vlogmas episode 6, I think it's 6, and happy Friday. We love Fridays here. For today's video, I'm going to be sharing all the books that I read in 2021. I'm only going to give you like the rating and a little bit of what I thought about the book. Like, I'm not going to give you the whole synopsis or like tell you what each book is about, because that would be a very long video. And I know what you're wondering, like 2021 is not over yet, but I have to be honest, I don't think I'm gonna read that much this December. I know I said I would, and you know what, New Year's resolution, I'm gonna stop saying that I'm gonna read a lot, because I never do. Like, things come up, sometimes I just don't want to read, you know. So I'm probably going to read like, what, 2 or 3 more books in December this year, but I will put all the reviews and all the ratings in my Instagram. I'm gonna give you all of that, don't worry. But basically, I'm gonna use my Goodreads to tell you guys all the ratings and like all the books that I read this year. So if you want to be part of Vlogmas, make sure to subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell so you get notified when I upload more videos, because right now I don't have an uploading schedule, so that's gonna be very helpful. So I do want to mention before I get started that all the books that I DNF'd or gave a bad rating are gonna be in a separate video. Like, I'm gonna tell you all the ratings in this video, but I'm gonna do a separate video on like the books that I DNF'd and talk about each book and why I DNF'd the book, or talk about why I didn't like the book, etc, etc. So yeah, let's go ahead and go to my Goodreads. If you want to go follow on my Goodreads, the link is down below. So I've read 53 books this year, and if you know me, you probably know that I started reading this year. I had never read in my entire life at all, and this year I remember I picked up It Ends With Us, and that changed everything. So just to let you guys know, for me 53 books is insane, because in my life I had ever read 1 book in 1 year, ever. I have my Goodreads here. I'm gonna put basically the screenshot of the book that I'm gonna talk about. And yeah, so the first book that I ever read was It Ends With Us. You guys know that I loved that book with my whole heart. I gave it 5 stars. It's honestly really good, and I remember that I read It Ends With Us when it didn't have that much hype, so I think that's why I liked it so much. So after It Ends With Us, I was like, oh my god, I love this author, so I'm just gonna read more books by this author. So that's what I did. I picked up Hopeless. I also gave this book 5 stars. This book is really heartbreaking, but it has a lot of trigger warnings, so look them up. It's kind of really harsh, but it was amazing. I loved it. The next book that I read was Ugly Love. You guys know that that's my favorite book of all time. Literally my favorite book. I loved it with my entire heart. 1,000,000 stars. 1,000,000. That's my favorite book. Next one is November 9, also by Colleen Hoover. I also gave 5 stars. I read this book in a day. Literally, I started I think in the morning, and I finished it at like 5 p.m. It's a really short book, and the plot twist was everything. The story, it was so cute. I loved it. After that, I read All Your Perfects, also by Colleen Hoover. You guys, I literally like picked up all her books. I was obsessed. I'm still obsessed, but I don't like that on Goodreads you can't like rate books point something. You need to like round it up. So in here I gave it a 5 stars, All Your Perfects, but I'm sure it wasn't 5 stars because I didn't give it a 5 stars. Probably it was 4.5 stars, but I didn't have the option to like do that. But All Your Perfects, 4.5 stars. Not my favorite, to be honest, by Colleen Hoover. It has that miscommunication trope that it was honestly very annoying. I was very annoyed. The ending was cute and all, but not my favorite book by her. Okay. The next book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I actually DNF'd this book, but I also gave it a 2 stars because it was putting me in a reading slump. If you follow me from the very beginning, on my TikTok, you know that I rated this book very low and you guys went crazy. But yeah. Okay, the next one is Bad Habit, which is the first book in a series by Charlie Rose. Bad Habit is the first book, and oh my god, I sat down to read this book at like, I think it was 8 a.m. and I finished the book at like 2 p.m. the same day. Oh my god, if you like Brother's Best Friend and a spicy book, this is it. I gave this book 5 stars because it was that good. I loved it so much. So after that, I read the second book, which is Bad Intentions. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. I did not love it as much as the first one, Bad Habit, but it was really good. The next book that I read was 1,000 Boy Kisses, and if you know this story, you probably know that I decided to read this book in a plane, in an airplane full of people. I didn't know that it would make me bawl my eyes out. Like, I remember that I got to, I think, page like 180, 150 on the plane, and I just had to stop reading because I was literally gonna start crying. I think I gave this book a 4.5. Here it says 5, but I'm pretty sure it was 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, it could have been a little bit shorter. It felt a little bit repetitive. Next book is We Were Liars, and oh my god, I read this book and I was so excited to read this book because it had so much hype on Book Talk. I gave this book 3 stars. Honestly, because I was not shocked. Honestly, the entire book I was just very confused. Next book that I read was Crave. This is also the first book in a series by Tracy Wolff. I've talked about this book a lot, but this was, I think, like the first real fantasy book that I read. This is a kind of like vampire, mythical creatures, adventure kind of thing. And I remember that I completely loved this book so much. And this is like a very long book. It has, I think, like 600 pages, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book that I read was The Midnight Library. I gave this book 3 stars. Let me read the review that I actually wrote a review. I love the story of this book, but it was just really slow for me. It was a struggle getting through it. I remember, yes, because it was a little bit repetitive. The next book that I read was the first book in the Off-Campus series by L. Kennedy, The Deal. I wrote, this book is everything. I gave this book 5 stars because honestly, this book is really, really good. It's a romance, but I would say more of like a comedy romance. But it's a college romance, and it's just kind of funny, but spicy. Okay, the next book that I read was Heartbones by Colleen Hoover, and I wrote, as always, Colleen Hoover wowed me again. I gave this book 5 stars. I probably gave it 4.5 stars, not 5 stars. Yeah, okay. I really liked this book. I did not see the plot twist coming at all, so that was good. I think I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars because the ending was not my favorite, but it's a weird ending. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Okay, the next book that I read was The Mistake. This is the second book of the Off-Campus series. I gave it 4 stars because I remember that it was cute, it was spicy, but I just got annoyed. After half of the book, I was kind of annoyed, and I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I wanted to finish, but it was good. Like, the story is good, the spice is good, but yeah, it kind of annoyed me. The next book that I read was The Score, which is the third book in the Off-Campus series. And I think I also gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, and here it says 4 stars, but I'm pretty sure it was 4.5 stars. Yeah, because I remember that I really liked this book. I feel like it's the spiciest book of the series. Well, I never finished reading the series. I haven't read The Goal, which is the 4th book, and I haven't read the novella, which is the Legacy. Like, I have them, but I haven't read them. But yeah, the next book that I read was Confess, and I obviously gave this book 5 stars. Let me read my review. I can say without a doubt that this is in my top 3 favorite books of all time. This story is so heart-wrenching, so beautiful, just so beautiful. I cried my eyes out, and this is a book by Colleen Hoover that is not talked about enough. The confession part of this story is also something that was so unexpected, and to see that all of them were from people in the real life just got to me even more. Please go read this beautiful story. Okay, the next book that I read was, well, the first book I read by Penelope Douglas. This is Punk 57. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a bully romance, but it was good. I liked it. The spice is there. 4.5 out of 5 stars. I do recommend it. But if you don't like bully romances, don't read the book. Okay, the next book that I read was Verity by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 5 stars. It's amazing. It's a little bit of romance, but thriller, suspense kind of book. This is what I wrote. Such a good book and a total mindfuck. Because you finish this book and you're just like, what the hell? Okay, the next one I read was Regretting You, also by Colleen Hoover. I also gave this book 5 stars because I remember that it was so cute that I just started crying. I bawled my eyes out because it was so cute. The definition of cute. This is what I wrote. I cried. I was honestly not expecting to cry, but the story was so beautiful and the ending, I love it. It's not one of my favorites, but I had to give it 5 stars because it was just so freaking cute. Okay, the next book that I read, oh my god, I don't know why, I was kind of like in a sad book marathon. I read The Cabin by Jacinda Wilder. This is another book that is gonna leave you speechless, heartbroken, but in the best way possible. It's a very beautiful story, but it's a harsh story. It talks about cancer. It talks a lot about grief and how to deal with it. It's just really beautiful. It's a really mature book. Next, I read the first book in the Addicted series, Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I gave this book 4 stars because it was not my favorite book. I have to say, I know that a lot of people love the entire series, but I also know that the books kind of get better with each book, you know? Okay, the next book that I read was Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 4 stars. I don't remember if it was 4.5 or 4, but also not one of my favorites. It's a really cute story. There were some parts of the book that I did really like, but definitely not my favorite book by her. Next one is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is when I started reading Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was the first book that I read. I gave it 4 stars. Not my favorite. It talks a lot about like family, but it was good. Then I read The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, also by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and this one, oh my god, this one was 5 stars, you guys. I just loved the entire concept of the book, the plot twist. Amazing. Amazing. The next book that I read, also I started a series and I did not finish the series. I read the first book in the 30 Year series by Lauren Asher, Throttled. I gave this book 4 stars. It was a lot of slow burn and a little bit of the couple being a couple, you know? That's what I didn't really like, but overall it was a really good book. Okay, the next book that I read was the second book that I read by Penelope Douglas, Birthday Girl. So this book is a age gap romance. It was honestly so good. It was so good. I haven't really read that many books by Penelope Douglas. I want to read like the Devil's Night series, but this book was so good, so good. It's one of my favorites. Okay, the next book that I read was The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. I gave this book 4 stars. It wasn't my favorite. It was really cute. Romance story. Not my favorite, but it was cute. The next book that I read was People We Meet on Vacation. It has a slow start because a lot of people do tend to get a little bit annoyed with the kind of like the beginning of the book. My best friend told me the same thing because I gifted her this book and she was like, is it just me or is it a little bit slow? And I was like, yeah, but it gets better. That's the thing. It does have a slow beginning, but it gets better. Okay, the next book that I read was sent to me by the author. It's an indie author. This book is Iridescent by Isagerliv, and this is a fantasy book, YA fantasy book, mythical creatures, adventure, and honestly it was a very, I loved it. I loved it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars because I honestly really enjoyed it. Okay, the next book that I read was Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. This is not a romance. I thought it was going to be a romance, but it's kind of not. Like, it's more about family, and I really liked the entire like message of the book. So it wasn't my favorite, but it has a really good message. The next book that I read was The Spanish Love Deception. I gave this book 5 stars, and this is by Elena Armas. It's so good, you guys. This is a slow burn. Be aware, this is a slow burn, but it was so freaking good. I loved it. I loved it. The next book that I read was the first book in the Summer I Turned Pretty trilogy. Well, the first book is named The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. I gave this book, honestly, look, I gave this book 5 stars, which I'm now gonna change to 4 stars. This is what I say when I like read books and now I kind of realize that maybe I didn't like it that much. So yeah, let's say it's a 4-star read. It wasn't my favorite because it does have the kind of love triangle trope, but it's very YA. It's a YA book. Okay, the next book that I read was The Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. Do I need to like talk about this book? You guys know that I love this book. Like, I completely love this book so much. 5 stars. And then I read the second book of the duology, The Daughter of the Siren Queen. Also 5 stars. It was actually my favorite book from that duology. Okay, the next book that I read was Twilight. We all know Twilight. I remember this is another one that I think I gave 4.5 out of 5 stars. Here it says 5 stars, but I'm pretty sure it was 4.5 stars. Okay, the next book that I read was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I gave this book 5 stars. It was amazing. I loved the writing style, the whole concept of the book, how the main characters kind of come together. It was amazing, and the plot twist at the end had me bawling my eyes out. So good. But trigger warning, yeah, kind of trigger warning for this book because it does talk a lot about drugs. Hard drugs. Next book that I read, and oh my god, one of my favorites, Twisted Love by Anna Huang. This is the first book of her series, the Twisted series. I'm so glad that I read this series, that I started reading this series, because there are only 2 books published at the moment. The 3rd book is coming out January, and the 4th book, I don't know when, but I read Twisted Love. It was a 5 stars. I buddy read this book with Larissa. But the next book that I read was the 2nd book from the series, which is Twisted Games, and it's my favorite so far from the series. The next book that I read was A Risk on Forever by N.S. Perkins. This is a romance book. A beautiful, beautiful romance book, you guys. I think I gave this book a 4.5. Okay, the next book that I read was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, and this is the first book of the duology. It's about 2 sisters, so this book is about the first sister, and then the second book that's coming out soon is about the second sister. So I gave this book 5 stars. It was amazing, spicy, kind of enemies to lovers at the beginning. Loved the romance. Then I read The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. I also gave this book 5 stars. So good. So good, you guys. This is about like witches, but out of nowhere there's spice and romance. I was pleasantly surprised with that book. Okay, the next book that I read was Building Bridges by Leah Fairchild. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. I always say that this is that kind of book that makes you believe in love. I've always said that about this book. It's a really cute but beautiful story. The next book that I read was The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang. I gave this book 5 stars. You guys know that I love this book with my entire heart. I was so shocked, surprised with this book. I did not see anything coming. Anything. I was really, really shocked. The next book that I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. Amazing, amazing. 5 stars. Chef's kiss, you guys. This book, so good. The next book that I read was Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. I'm speechless. This book left me speechless. Towards the ending, I was crying so much that I just couldn't even read the page. Please, if you haven't pre-ordered this book, please go do so. Okay, the next book that I read was Archer's Voice. I did a reading vlog for this book if you want to go watch it. And I loved this book. I always say this is the definition of beautiful. This book is beautiful. It's just so different from other romance books. It's just so different. And that's what I loved about this book. Okay, the next book that I read was To Love Jason Thorne by Ella Mays. And you guys, 5 stars. This is a series of 2 books. This series has become one of my favorite series. I read To Love Jason Thorne and To Hate Adam Connor. Those are the 2 main books. But I do have to say that my favorite of those 2 is the second one, To Hate Adam Connor. Okay, the next book that I read was You've Reached Sam by Dustin Thau. 5 stars, you guys. 5 stars. This book talks a lot about how to deal with grief and how to let go. It's just incredible. That book is incredible. It's a masterpiece. Dustin, you did an amazing job. Okay, the next book that I read was King of Corium by C. Holman. 2 stars. This was my review. No. Just nope. If you're not 18, don't read this book. That was my review. That is still what I think. I'm really not a fan of this book at all. This is the most recent book I've read. This is Window Shopping by Tessa Bailey. I gave this book 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's a really short book. I gave it 4.5 just because it's kind of very insta-lovey. The spice is 5 out of 5. Loved it. Okay, besties, so those are all the books I read in 2021. Stay tuned for the other video where I'm gonna talk about the books that I DNF'd. Make sure to subscribe down below and turn on the notification bell so you get notified and you don't miss that video. But I love you guys. This has been a crazy year. This has been an amazing year. Thank you for watching. Remember that yesterday, Thursday, I uploaded a new podcast episode where I talk about all things. Well, I give my advice on how to start a Bookstagram or BookTok account and like things you need to know, things that I've learned. I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video, which is probably Sunday. I will see you then. Bye.
Oh, corks and bottles, ready to pop out. Oh, no more crying. We are knocking out another year of new loves.